want to just welcome you here this evening. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. My name is Tracy Kraft, and I am the State Director for the Ohio Black Alliance for Educational Options. We are a national parent advocacy organization that supports parental choice. The purpose of our evening tonight is just to have a small dialogue amongst the panelists as well as with you to really digest and examine the disparities that exist between urban education and education in general. We are hoping that this information is going to be valuable to each of you. We are encouraging you at the end of the meeting, we'll let you know when that takes place, that we will be open for question and answers. We're going to be asking questions of our panelists, and we're hoping that when you leave this meeting, you will be energized and encouraged to be involved and engaged in the movement and concerned about our children where education is concerned. As you know, that is a challenge for us, not just here in Ohio, but all across the country. And we need everybody on board to make sure that our children are receiving the quality education that they receive. And the panelists, we've created a diverse group of panelists tonight. So I want to take the time to welcome our panelists. They're not going to come up now, but I'm going to have them turn around and wave to the audience so you'll know who they are. Once we finish a video clip, then at that time we're going to bring up Dr. Benjamin Chavis. So just so you know, we have Superintendent Lori Ward with Dayton Public Schools who's going to be speaking with us today. Dr. T.J. Wallace with Dayton Leadership Academy. Marlon Aldridge, President and CEO of the Black Men's Think Tank. And Representative Roland Wimburn, he is going to be here. He's a little delayed because of his legislative responsibilities in Columbus, but he will be here closer to 7 o'clock. So we are expecting him shortly. And then without any mention needed at all, Dr. Benjamin Chavis, who comes to us today from Florida, and he is the former leader of the NAACP, and he is also a senior advisor to the Black Alliance for Educational Options. We want you to hear from all of them, and we want you to ask questions that are going to evoke some creative and innovative ideas within yourselves and cause you to become more involved in education if you're not already engaged. Oh, and I'm sorry, I left off my pastor, I apologize. Reverend Dr. Carlton Williams, pastor of Mount Olive Baptist Church. I apologize. And I would be remiss if I did not bring up our founder, Dr. Howard Fuller. He is the founder of the Black Alliance for Educational Options. We're going to show a video clip of a speech from him. It's only about 8 minutes long. After that, I'm going to bring up Dr. Benjamin Chavis and all of our other panelists, and we're going to begin the dialogue around examining the landscape of education in urban America. Now I'm going to ask that our panelists come up to the stage. Dr. Ben Chavis, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. But I want each of you to know that when I first had the opportunity to hear Dr. Fuller speak, it was life-changing for me because I became more committed. Though I had children who were being educated at the time, I was a parent who was concerned about my children. And I realized that we have a bigger responsibility to all children. So once I heard him speak, he motivated me and inspired me to be committed to making sure that quality education is available to all children in all places all around the country. So I am very grateful that we have all of our panelists up here. I'm excited about the dialogue that's getting ready to take place. I encourage you to sit back, relax, and listen, but formulate your questions for them at the end of the discussion because it's important that we are engaging you. You are an intricate part of this revolution, as we call it, and we want you to be inspired to become more engaged and not just leave this place, as Dr. Fuller mentioned, just coming to another meeting. We want you to leave with the tools and the information necessary so that you can be active in making sure that all children across this nation and as well as in the state of Ohio become educated and prepared to be productive citizens of society. So without further ado, Dr. Chavis.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I would like to thank God Almighty. I'm always thankful to the Creator when sisters and brothers can be together in one place to discuss issues that impact our quality of life. I want to thank Sister Tracy and all those that work for the Black Alliance for Educational Options here in Ohio. I'm always glad to be back in Ohio and really pleased to be back in Dayton. It's been a while. And I'm so thankful for my fellow panelists. I'm not going to make a long speech, just a few comments, and so we can get into the heart of the matter while we're here to address the broad issue of urban education, education in the urban setting, but also we need to talk about what's happening right here in Dayton and what's happening in the state of Ohio. I'm a senior advisor to Baeo, the Black Alliance for Educational Options. Howard Fuller, we just witnessed on the film, the founder of Baeo. Dr. Fuller and I worked together many years in my home state of North Carolina over 30, 40 years ago. And it seems that I would be the first to say that in 2012, if you look at what is happening to black people and all people, on the one hand, we can say we've made some progress. We have a brother in the White House. We have brothers and sisters in the Congress of the United States. We've got brothers and sisters that work for the state government here in Ohio. We have brothers and sisters that work in the government here in this part of Ohio. We have brothers and sisters in the school system. And so part of our long struggle for freedom, justice, and equality is to get us into the system so that we can change the system in the interest of our children, and I say our children, but in the interest of all children. One of the things I've learned in my career, if you're not concerned about yourself and your own children, it's a little difficult to have credibility to be concerned about everybody else's kids and we're not concerned about our own. And that's why several years ago I was very pleased to accept the opportunity to work more directly with Baeo. My background is civil rights, and that's really fighting for freedom in various ways. I'm so glad to see some members of the NAACP here tonight. I'm glad to see some of my fraternity brothers here. I'm glad to see some church folks up in here. Amen. That's good. It's all good. You see, the issue I think, Tracy, that we're faced with on the terms of where we are in terms of the educational system, where we are in terms of delivery of a quality, the best educational opportunity for our children, it's a complex matter. It's not really something simple. And part of the diversity of the panel tonight reflects the need for us to come up with some different perspectives. But at the end of the day, after we share our different perspectives, the question is, what is it we can do together for the interest of our children getting the best quality education? Not only in Ohio, but the best quality education in the world. If I had to put my finger on the most single important thing in life, is to get a good foundation, get a good education. And of course we know education is not only in the classroom, education is also at home. Education is in the church. A lot of our young brothers and sisters get educated in the street. There's education in the street. But the question is, whether it's formal education or informal education, how are we advancing, or how should we advance the plight of our people? How should we open the door wider? Part of our long movement has been to open up doors. Because the presupposition was if we open up doors and get some brothers and sisters to be principal, to be superintendent, to be school teacher, to be in the governor's office, to be in the Congress, to be in the White House, our situation would change. I tell brothers and sisters in the church and in the mosque, be careful what you pray for, because God will answer your prayers. I believe our young people today is the best generation of young people we've ever been blessed to witness. They're the best, they're not the worst. There are too many player haters on our young people. And what I mean by that, people who push down our young people rather than to lift our young people up. If this generation is the best generation, then that means they deserve the best love, the best support, the best nurture, the best mentorship, the best encouragement to do their best, to do their God-given best. The greatest tragedy in life is for any human being, first, not to even recognize that they got God-given gifts and talents, and then not to pursue the fulfillment of your God-given gifts and talents. In the church, anything that gets in the way of you doing what God wants, that's a sin. I believe that our young people deserve the best. The Black Alliance for Educational Option also believes our young people deserve the best. I think everybody got a package tonight, right, Tracy? America? Everything in the package is important. So please read it. But before you leave here tonight, please fill out this sheet. We need you to be involved. I used to think that change could come just by being a spectator. Change comes when you participate in bringing about the change. And we need, the truth of the matter is, the crisis of education of our young people, we need more parents involved in the school system. We need more brothers and sisters involved in the school system. And so this sheet enables Baeo to be in touch with you. We want you to join Baeo, the Black Alliance for Educational Options here in Ohio. And I have to say to Tracy and to Erica and all of those, the Ohio Baeo is one of our best chapters. One of our best chapters. I'm a former resident of Cleveland. I wasn't born in Ohio, but I can claim some Ohio residency. And one of the things that always special about Ohio, Malcolm X said that the South is anything, when it comes to racial issues, the South is anything south of the Canadian border. So Ohio is up south. And most of us, sometimes a little hesitant to admit to our roots in the South. But the truth of the matter is, I believe one of the reasons why Baeo has one of the strongest chapters here is because the struggle here is more intense. The issues, the complexities are more profound. It's not a simple matter of somebody just wave a wand and all of a sudden everybody got great schools, great opportunity, great resources. If you look at the state legislature and how it apportions funding to the schools, it's a major problem. Inadequate funding. But even if they had adequate funding, how accountable are we to that structure? And how accountable is that structure to us in Ohio? So it's just not a matter of money. While money is a factor, it's about what our brother said on the film, the political will, and I would add to it the spiritual will. Because I believe that we have to believe in this movement, not just contribute to it and let somebody else go out and get the job done. We all have to play a role. And that's why one of the things I'm here tonight is to encourage you to join Baeo. And we hope that by the end of tonight's panel discussion, you would agree that the Black Alliance for Educational Option is worthy of our support, is worthy of our participation, is worthy of our demands that we make change in the interest of our children. And that's why we're here. And I thank all of you for taking this Wednesday night. And I know this is prayer meeting night. But in a sense, we have a prayer meeting in here tonight. The Lord says, what does God require of you, O man, O people, but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. Our young people are not being given justice. Justice is not being done. I'm talking about equal justice in their sight and in their right. And that's where we all have to come in. So I'm looking forward. We're going to have an interactive session. Is that right, Tracy?
Yes.
Where we're going to have each panelist. Tracy, you want each panelist to make an opening statement? How do you want me to do the panel?
Yes.
So I think you've introduced everybody. I'll start to my right. If you could just say who you are again and give your opening statement on the theme of where are we in terms of education in the urban sector. Where are we in terms of the educational system and process here in Dayton, Ohio? And what is it that we can do, working with the Black Alliance for Educational Options, to advance not only the cause, but to advance the quality, not just the quantity, the quality of the education of our young people in this great city. So thank you very much for listening. We're ready to have our discussion.
Good evening. My name is Carlton Williams, pastor Mount Olive Baptist Church, and I'm here as a representative of the faith community. And I'm here because I believe that the faith community's role is absolutely critical in the role of educating and sustaining our children. And so I'll be speaking from that perspective.
Good evening. Lori Ward, Superintendent, Dayton Public Schools. 15,000 babies, my babies, our babies, and I will be speaking from that perspective.
TJ Wallace, currently the principal of Dayton Liberty School. We have one school, two campuses, one on Riverview and Dunbar. It's the Dayton View Academy, and Dayton Academy is where I am. We have 770 K through 8 youngsters, babies, as you say. What I'd like to say in opening is just to say how proud I am of Baeo. When I had the good fortune to start the PACE program here in town, brought in Gary Dillard Stone from the Urban League to run Parents Advancing Choice in Education, and we were able to use some of our funding to fund the first chapter of Baeo in Ohio as Howard and his national team got started. And that's where we found our first director, and still the director, a volunteer PACE mom, the first family who was using a PACE scholarship. And she got the fever. And Tracy Kraft, and brought on Erica Murphy. So I'm really proud of what they've accomplished, and now they're running the whole Ohio chapter. And just another entity that is doing the right work for the right reasons.
Good evening. I'm Marlon Aldridge, President and CEO of the Black Man's Think Tank. I'm also very happy to be here. I'll be speaking out. Well, first of all, I'd like to say I agree with Dr. Fuller and Dr. Chavis that the political systems, that the educational systems debilitate black children. But I want to broaden that perspective to say that all systems that America could create debilitate black children. So that's the perspective that I'll look at, the perspective of the larger society, and speak outside of the family, because we beat up on our families a lot. In the educational arena, we always want to point the finger at the family. The family is a system, but there are larger systems outside of the family in which the family operates. That's my perspective, and that's where I put my focus at.
All right, let's give the panel a hand. Thank you so much. Well, one thing I appreciate about Baeo, they always prepare for sessions like this. So we have some prepared questions, and then we will take some questions from the audience. First question is to Dr. Carlton Williams. A series of 2010 studies at Howard University Journal of Negro Education reported how church involvement increases education success, particularly in the inner cities. An article entitled Faith in the Inner City, the Urban Black Church and Students' Educational Outcomes, Dr. Brian Barrett, an education professor at the State University of New York College at Carlton, describes the unique contributions of black churches, that these contributions play in cultivating successful students in the inner cities. So Dr. Williams, how would you define the black church's role in education today?
Well, thank you, Dr. Chavis. First, let me say, while she adjusts that, let me say good evening to the members of Mount Olive who've come out in support of this endeavor. Appreciate you. But also got to get you for skipping Bible studies. So. I was warned. Are we okay? Okay. And if this was Sunday, I would say the devil is a liar and we would just move right on. Right? Let me say thank you to Tracy and Erica. Tracy warned me not to preach. I told her I did this Sunday. I'm actually addressed this issue on Sunday, and so sermons on the web. So we have no intentions of preaching. But let me just say that in the 1890s, W.E.B. Du Bois addressed the issue of low-income blacks, and what he said was that low-income blacks will never achieve academic success without strong families in the church. Right. 2008, President Barack Hussein Obama said that the education of the children begins by the parents day one, and he again spoke to the issues of strong families. Several studies have concluded that the church has a prominent role in the education of our children. And one of the issues that we deal with in terms of, Brother Audrey spoke about it, in terms of government, one of the things that President Obama didn't talk about was the inclusion of the church as a viable entity, given the evidence of these studies that the role that the church plays. And what happens is that when you deal with a lot of governmental entities, they suffer from what psychologists call organizational narcissism. That they think that outside of their organization or outside of their agency, nothing can happen. And that's certainly not the case. We all know the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. And the village has gone to sleep. The church has gone to sleep. And so the role of the church is critical, and there are certain satellite models of churches that are actively involved. But as a national strategy, as a holistic strategy, churches are not doing what they have been charged to do. We can't get beyond denominational lines or all of that kind of nonsense that just stymies the church to even think about what the major issues are. And certainly the education of our children is a critical issue. Now, in the few minutes that I have, let me just say, Dr. Barrett's study, what it deals with is that in the church provides something that the schools don't provide. The church is the only entity where children, for example, in our church, I highlighted a gentleman Sunday who worked for about 30 years at General Motors. Now, the gentleman that I highlighted, he couldn't read or write, but he owned 3 homes. He drove to Alabama and back, South Carolina and back. He was unable to read road signs. but somehow he was able to navigate that. And see, he successfully paid for those homes. Now, the one thing that that gentleman can demonstrate that the school can't is an African-American male with a work ethic that's unparalleled. But that's the role model that our children need and can get in the churches. The study also highlights the fact that when there is high church involvement, children study better, they retain better, there's accountability, and they have access to role models in the church that they don't have access to in the school system. Now, unfortunately, I've gone to our schools, and I'm telling you, I don't see anybody in there on most instances that looks like me. So I got to deal with the issue by Dr. Jamanza Kunjufu. Who are the role models for our little black boys? Because they're not there. Right? So there are a lot of issues that the church can provide. So the church's role is absolutely critical in what needs to happen in terms of turning this thing around. I think my time is up, but certainly come back.
Thank you very much, Dr. Williams, for your words of wisdom. We now turn to our superintendent of the Dayton Public Schools. Sister Ward, thank you so much for being here. Each year, thousands of students graduate from high school, and some say that even though they graduate, they are still academically unprepared for college. As a result, approximately 1/3 of incoming freshman students require some type of remedial or developmental work before being allowed to take college-level courses. How does the educational system in America, broadly speaking, and then here in Dayton, address the rising challenge in transition from secondary to post-secondary studies?
Well, first of all, I'd like to just say that I'm the superintendent of every child that resides in the city of Dayton. So my friend right beside me, Mr. TJ, he has how many he has 700 plus of the babies that are kindergarten through 8th grade. And that question is powerful. So I'll take it all the way back, and I'm glad I'm following Dr. Williams. If you look at what's happening to education nationally, even state, local, people will say standardized testing has destroyed the fabric of the quality of education that children receive. Annie Casey Foundation study shows that if by the 3rd grade, if you are not reading on grade level, and everyone in this room should hear this, should know this, I see the heads bobbing. If you're not proficient in 3rd grade reading, your chances to graduate on time are reduced, and your chances to go on to post-secondary experiences are reduced. And if you do go, your chances of taking remedial courses increase. So what do? First of all, as a community, and I'm just go local. As a community, education is not important in this city. I'll say it again. Education is not important in this city. Because if it was many years ago, instead of Dayton Public Schools, instead of charters coming into the city, the community should have put pressure on Dayton Public Schools to improve. And you improve by, thank you, you improve by one major factor, and that's the quality of teachers. Now, I heard role models. I'll give you a statistic. 36% of our teaching faculty in Dayton Public Schools are minorities. That's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. We have young people going to teacher preparation programs and they cannot pass the state teaching test. High quality teachers are in the suburbs. And mainly, if you really look at why we let it happen, 1/3 And that's because our families are disengaged. And many of our families are the families we disenfranchised ourselves. So how do we get the families and the community engaged? And when I say engaged, let me just say, I always tell a story about the mother who gets chastised because she doesn't come to parent-teacher conferences. But you know what? That mother might be a seamstress, and she might love somebody delivering some material and making sashes for the choir. But if the school doesn't establish a relationship, you'll never know. And we have a disengaged family. Faith-based. I remember a time when churches were open after school. They were like an after-school rec center. After school, in a safe haven. If you had working parents and you didn't have anybody to watch you, you could skip and run to your church and have some chocolate chip cookies and have a good time. We don't have that involved. We have over 600 faith-based organizations in the city of Dayton. Over 600. We cannot, so 1/3, let me go back on topic, 1/3 remedial. Quality of education. The quality of education starts with high quality teachers. And everyone in this room knows that that is one of the largest challenges of any school system, is finding high quality teachers. I'm talking about teachers that know content. Teachers that can teach Algebra 1. Teachers that know how to teach physics. Advanced placement courses. And urban education gets a slide because many times our families aren't educated to ask the questions. So they don't have the advocates. So you and I stand as the advocates. I challenge everyone, if you want to look at a very good piece of current transformation, has anyone in the room heard of the Cleveland Municipal School System Transformation Plan? If you have not seen that, please Google Cleveland Municipal School System Transformation Plan and the vision of how we can change this landscape. And you know, we're almost at the time in Dayton, Ohio, we could buy some empty buildings and go residential. Let us raise the babies. Come to us, because if we're the safe haven, guess what? They still leave us to go into an environment that is usually not positive. Right. And so I firmly believe that, number one, our community needs to get on the same page about the quality of education. I'll give you another data point that I'm sorry, I'll turn it. We have over 400 English second language learners in Dayton Public Schools, representing over 20 languages. So what's different about their families and the African American family? They value education. They value education. And that's where the family unit has to go. We have to educate our families so that they can discern. It's really the mission of the Black Alliance for Educational Options.
Thank you very much. Superintendent Ward, thank you for your insight, for your presence in that very important leadership position in Dayton Public Schools. I'm going to come to Brother Aldridge last. But Dr. Wallace, before asking your question, I'm the moderator, but I'm tempted just to say one thing about what Dr. Ward reported. I do work also in New York City, and in New York, they take the third grade reading test. They take the failure of the third grade reading test to determine how many prisons they're going to build. I don't know about Ohio, but New York, somebody's making money off of how the disproportionate incarceration of our young people that's determined at the 3rd grade. So when we talk about improving and intervening in how to not only make sure our young people read the way they're supposed to be reading by the 3rd grade, but there are consequences, serious consequences, life-changing consequences, if they don't read by the 3rd grade. It's not something you just push off to the 4th grade, the 5th grade, the 6th grade, into high school. The problem compounds itself. And then, to me, there's a sense of urgency around this question. So, Dr. Wallace, there has been an increasing interest in after-school programs that can provide youth with a safe and supportive adult supervised environment and offer them various growth-enhancing opportunities, including activities and experiences that promote academic, personal, social, and recreational development. To what extent can after-school programs have, or it says here, to what extent can after-school programs have on the academic, personal, and social development of students? And then correlated to that, how can this situation that many feel is broken, how can it be fixed?
Well, I'm guessing there might be some people here tonight who are more directly involved, possibly even in after-school programs in some of our nonprofits and faith-based organizations. So I'm not going to speak as an expert, but let me take a quick look or make a couple comments about recent history of the after-school programs. Back in the 60s and 70s, as poverty increased and the inner cities became more challenged, after-school programs were designed to try to prevent school dropouts, substance abuse, teen pregnancy, and the like, youth crime. In the 80s and 90s, there was some emphasis through after-school programs put on achieving positive outcomes in youth development by focusing on the joint roles of family and community, churches, schools. We talked about academic benefits of after-school programs. I'll cite research about the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program. Some of you might have been involved in our local chapters. After 18 months of participation, one-on-one with a big brother or big sister, stats show that 46% less likely to start using drugs if they hadn't started yet, 27% less likely to initiate alcohol use at a really young age, 32% less likely to hit someone in the last 12 months during those 18 months. Moderately higher grades, they're skipping school less. So obviously that one-on-one design of Big Brothers and Big Sisters outside of the school day has had some powerful benefits. I worked for a family foundation doing education philanthropy here in Dayton for several years. One of the things that was real popular in the last decade was a term nationally in the philanthropy circles, strategic grant making, more bang for the buck. So more and more foundations started asking for data to support the impact of a program. And what it did was it forced, and I had a chance to visit a lot of the after-school programs here in town who were asking for funding. And one of the things it did helped accomplish was no longer could you claim impact by the number of kids you were serving. But you had to define more clearly what you were doing with the time you had. The time alone in a safe environment wasn't enough for that after-school program impact and for funding. So we saw programs, the Urban League and Dayton Christian Center, Wesley Center, for example, develop those programs in a way where they could more specifically define their impact, which was really important. And again, the personal benefits, social benefits, Girls Inc., which is included here in Dayton, and I know our Dayton Leadership Academies have benefited from that. You're talking about helping young ladies promote their leadership at a younger level to have more confidence to manage stress, handle peer pressure, and offset what research has proven to be lost in the summer if they're not in formal schooling. It's not a year-round calendar. If they're not, there's unfortunately some of the gain that we create is lost during the summer. So when school starts again, we have to start back at a deficit to go forward.
Thank you. Last, I would like to call upon for the moment outreach. The rapid and constant pace of change in technology is increasing both opportunities and challenges for schools. Some schools have been adept at keeping up with those changes, while many others are falling far behind, creating a digital divide based largely on the quality of educational technology rather than just simple access to the internet. What can be done to decrease the disparities that exist between schools that have kept the technological pace as opposed to those that have not?
Well, I don't think there's a shortage of knowledge in our community. We have very knowledgeable people inside of our community, both mainstream and, of course, inside of our own communities. I think what we lack is organization. And our model is that knowledge is power, but that organization is intelligence. And we take that term from developmental psychology. And one of the things that you see among all living organisms is that they exhibit this one characteristic called organization. So from my standpoint, and what I'll always be very adamant about, is that we better organize our communities. One of the ways we can do that is take this knowledge that we do have, we can have champions that are either exist inside of the schools or champions that exist outside of the school that actually knows how to utilize this technology. Because we're using it, but we're not using it to the fullest of its ability. Like they say, for example, I give you an example, inside of Word, most of us are familiar with Microsoft Word. Inside of Microsoft Word now, there's a dictionary. Most of you know that? And not only is there a dictionary, but because we have access to the internet, we can also alt-click. It'll give you the definition, but it'll also take you to research sites.
Right.
We need to learn how to use this technology to the best of its ability. That's what we're doing. We're using it, but we're not using it properly. So we need champions inside the school, outside of the school that are familiar with the social media. I think all schools should have some type of social media site set up so that they can communicate with their parents. That's another characteristic of living organisms is that they're able to communicate. So if the technology is there, why not allow us to use it? You know, I can guarantee you, these parents, these very young parents, are on the Facebooks, they're on the MySpaces. So that's when you have to meet them what they are. Facebook, MySpace, or some of the technologies that we can utilize to make sure that we interface with the parents. I'd like to commend your school for Dayton Leadership Academies makes good use of social media websites. I think all of the sites, all of the schools, it should be a requirement that you communicate, you can use email distribution lists, that they're highly organized, it allows you to communicate with the parents. Hey, have the parents a mailing, there's a button you can put on your websites where the parents could sign up, mailing lists. And this is another way that you can communicate with the parents. You have Twitter. I mean, there's all kinds of communication technologies out there that we can utilize to make sure that our parents and the kids as well. As a matter of fact, there's another learning opportunity for the kids to teach the parents. Because a lot of times, that's how our kids are going to learn. Now, you're going to hear a lot of talk about the quality of teachers, and I agree with that. But there's another side to that as well, and that we have to allow our students to teach other students. It's called peer learning. There's an opportunity to engage technology and that. There's all kinds of technologies that we can utilize inside of the classroom to engage our students. Let them teach one another, and let them teach the teachers as well. If you say that our teachers are having problems, then maybe the teachers need to be taught by the students. Maybe the teachers need to be taught by the parents. There's all kinds of opportunities that we can utilize so that this thing called learning, and on the larger scale, this thing called development, can take place. Because they take place simultaneously. And we need to take advantage of that. We need to look at, we're speaking about technology, and of course, communication is a big piece of that. We need to make sure that we're taking advantage of communication in all of its various aspects. You know, we need to look at communication as a defense mechanism to fight what we're going to talk about systems. I'm sure we're going to get to that a little bit later. But we need to look at these communication systems as a means to defend ourselves. Okay, that's also another characteristic of living organisms is that they defend themselves. And we need to use everything that is available to us that allows us to do that. And communication is a big key to do that. Okay, now, like say for example, I want you to be sure about what I'm talking about. These systems, these political systems, these educational systems, I can guarantee you, they're going to focus most of the problem on the family. We've already heard people allude to that earlier, is that they're going to focus on the parents. They're going to disparage the mother. You know, if you look into research, there's a lot of research that's put out there by the educational system that says that a lot of the disadvantage that the child has to do with the mother. So they're going to disparage the mother, they're going to ridicule the father, and they're going to deprecate the culture as the means as to why our children do not do well in school. See, what you have to understand is that, and I like to use the term systems because that's really what we are. The family is the basic unit of these living systems that we talk about in sociology. But then you look at the neighborhoods, and then you look at our organizations. These are living systems as well. And these living systems, these organizations, these institutions do not have the same motives and values that we as individuals have. You know, these systems will do things that the penal system, for example, we spoke of, will do things that individuals inside of the penal system, if you bring them out, they would do things that the individuals would not do. So these living organisms are a whole lot different than we as individuals are. And we have to begin to recognize that and to defend ourselves appropriately. And we can use communication, we can use the technology to do that. So there's a lot of advantages that that technology brings to us. It's just a tool, though. We have to understand it as a tool, and we have to use it in order to develop ourselves, both as individuals, as families, as neighborhoods, and as organizations. So we need to do it at all levels.
Thank you very much. Now, I want to say to the members of the panel, you can jump in, and I think everyone's had a good chance to answer a specific question. But I'm going to follow back up with Superintendent Ward. What are some of the tips that you could give the audience tonight for a healthy school board and constituent engagement? What would you say that we need to do to get better engagement from the public to the school board and just to be a constituent body more broadly, more effective going forward?
I believe in an educated citizenship, and so I'll start by saying that we have to become truly educated in regards to how school systems are measured, what kind of community supports are in play to meet the needs of students, how we can work collaboratively. As far as a school board, and by the way, I have one school board member, I believe, in the audience, Nancy Nerney, and if I'm overlooking anyone else. it's interesting to note, some would, you said you want to preach. So, board member Nerdy might have to shut her ears. One of our biggest issues is the political challenge to step out and go vote.
Yep.
And when you're an elected official, you usually don't step out and go vote.
That's right.
And so I've really struggled over the time with how I, as a superintendent, have to always be very cognizant of making sure that the board and I are on the same page, so we're communicating the same way. But I do believe in Dayton Public Schools, we're going to have to really start holding more open town hall meetings. And yes, Marlon, I will talk about the family, because we have families that we need to educate. We just have to, make sure that they're educated to discern high quality education. Educated to be able to make the choice. So how you raise constituent support really is educating. I think that's what's happened in the urban systems that were so fragile. The majority of the constituents are not. And we don't find a way to make sure that they do become educated to make a choice. We just bring choices to them without really making sure that they understand the power that they have as the final arbiter of the choice of education for their children.
Exactly.
Thank you. And Reverend Williams, Pastor Williams, I want to go back to you. Your comment about how you saw the church community in terms of trying to maximize its true potential. What information could you share in terms of how your peers can be rallied, can be mobilized to be involved in the movement for education?
Thank you. We've suffered over the last couple of decades. Bigger is not necessarily better. Right. We've gone through the mega church syndrome and all that kind of stuff. And I think what we really need to do is we need to get back to the commitment, and we need to understand what the church is for. Every prominent institution in our community has come through the church, right? Schools, many of our political leaders, they've come through the institution called the church. And so we've gotten away from that. And Dr. Kunjufu, he says it this way, the three categories that he'll put the church in. He'll talk about an entertainment church, confinement church, or liberation church. And there's too much entertainment going on. There's too much confinement going on, and there's not a lot of liberation going on. Now, in the liberation church, it speaks to what the superintendent was talking about, and it speaks to the paradigm of which I've come out of. The church was everything to me as a kid. It was that safe haven. It was that place where you could always go. It meant something, and there was always somebody there. And in many of our churches today, you can't find people after Sunday at 2 o'clock, and you won't see them again until next Sunday. Some of them, if you're blessed, you might see them on Wednesday. But the church has to have a commitment to the community. I pastor a church on the west side of Dayton, and it's very interesting because we're going through some growing pains in that we're programming out of space. So it's a pleasant problem to have. But in talking with some of my colleagues, my peers, okay, it was suggested to me that, because we have to build, so it was suggested to me that we leave the west side of Dayton and go to the suburbs. Well, let me give you the rationale. The rationale is that if you leave the west side of Dayton, you go to the suburbs, you get a better loan, you'll get a better interest rate. But my response was, but what about the commitment to the people that are here?
That's right.
Okay, and so we're sacrificing some superficial kinds of entities that the church should never be involved with in the first place. The church I'm not concerned about interest rates or loans. That's not my problem. That's God's problem. If he tell me to bill, he'll pay. I mean, so there's some things that we're getting into that have nothing to do with it. And let me get back to about the constituency. We need to educate our parishioners about how to become actively involved, and we need to hold them accountable. And that's why I'm so pleased that, my personal Bible study class is here tonight. This is their class. There has to be some practical application of what we've been studying for 200 years. When are we going to do what we've been singing about and preaching about, and when are we going to do it? Okay, so there has to be some practical application, and our people need to be more educated. Our peers need to be educated, but our peers need to be challenged as well. Dr. Chavis, you said something, and I'm very curious. You said, now when we leave here, because of all the diversity on this panel, we have to figure out how we're going to get together. And that's the one question I can't answer about my peers. All right? I mean, there's so much dogma associated with my peers. Who can preach and who can't preach, and all that drama. And we can't get to the mission at hand, which is serving the people. I don't care who preach. But I do care about that kid that needs the support of the church, that needs that safe haven, that needs me as a pastor to create a space for that child. I do care about that. You worry about who's going to preach the gospel. Since it ain't mine, I'm not going to worry about that, but I do worry about creating a safe haven. So I really wish I knew how to speak to my peers along that issue, but I can tell you this, and I'll close with this. I'm very proud of the fact that 3 days a week we do HIV testing at our church. We do Hep C screening, we do HIV testing. The church is 109 years old, so it was a very traditional place. It has become very non-traditional in terms of meeting the needs. And so I think my way of addressing my peers is to shame them into action. I want people to say, well, if they're doing that over there, how come we're not doing it at our church? What's wrong with us? So if we can just set an example, then maybe, we can get some response from the people.
And with actually the New Testament, Paul wrote a lot of the letters back to the church after he had visited. If he had stayed in the place, they would probably have done something to him. So as one who's passing through Ohio, I want to make a few comments. And then I'll write you all a letter after I leave town. But in all seriousness, I listened very carefully to what all the panelists. Let's give them a hand. I thought everybody gave a serious contribution.